So it could be very interesting. Yeah.
Co-starring not Chris Tucker or Tracy Morgan.
No, Jack
But Jack
Black
Black
and Anne
and Anne
Hathaway.
Hathaway. There you
Well,
go.
at least it's not someone that speaks with a high pitch in his voice, for 90 minutes. Tracy Morgan, Chris Tucker, I'm looking at you.
But if you see Tracy Morgan in a cop out, he delivers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that indeed. I think we're slightly approaching a plot in this movie, and it's here's the balanced view of a Hong Kong cinema fan, in my opinion, and I'm not looking down on anyone else. I'm just saying I think it's a way to go. You can look at a movie and criticize it heavily for 30, 40, even 50 minutes out of 90 minutes, and it still will have enough moments to make it a classic. Enter the Fat Dragon is not refined filmmaking with great pace and interest all the time, but it has such strong elements elsewhere. The things we've discussed: Sammo's charm, dopey charm, his infatuation with Bruce Lee, great fight action, and just general fun, and that wins over all the bad elements, if you will. And Hong Kong movies are classic in that regard. They are uneven as hell. Especially the 70s and 80s stuff, in particular the 80s stuff, all the cheap comedies and the heroic bloodshed movies. And they contradicted themselves within the movies because you could have rape, comedy, bloody shootout, even horror elements mixed in together in one movie, and it was still
Oh no, I mean
work.
that. I remember when I first started watching Hong Kong movies at the cinema in England. You would sometimes just see a poster and have no idea: is this a comedy? Is this an action movie? Or you'd be watching a comedy and suddenly there'd be a full, a hardcore 10-minute action sequence. Yeah, I mean that was one of the reasons I fell in love with the genre, because it delivered on everything. You could never tell what was going to be there.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't really do that now. I came up with one example when you were talking about the poster there of a movie that had a hard time selling itself, and that was actually a Korean movie, Save the Green Planet. And is anyone has ever seen that? It's wacky, it's violent, and it's incredibly touching. And you sort of no wonder they didn't know how to sell that, so they just put the lead, the guy from Sympathy for Mr. Vengeance, on there being quite wacky and thumbs up and everything's cool. And the movie is so really down. It's a downer.
Oh no, I mean, but that's sometimes the thing is that it's that hard sort of how to get people to come in and see that movie. What elements work? Yeah.
Unfortunately, in that case, there was barely any there was barely any box office, so they failed. They won a few awards, but and acclaim, but it was a flop, unfortunately. But that's nowadays. It's only a few years old, that film.
I mean, that's one of the things where people forget is that the good thing of DVD and Blu-ray and everything is a lot of these movies, they do get a second chance at life, and it's just some movies are just, like we said, are so hard to market theatrically. Yeah, I mean, there's certain films that if you try and explain the plot to someone, they'll just get even more confused. And then suddenly on DVD, like movies like Donnie Darko, etc., people can watch them, pick up on certain elements, tell people about them, and it spreads. I mean, I love seeing stuff at the cinema, and I miss the good old days when I first came to Hong Kong, where everything got cinema release, every single movie. I mean, being able to see Hong Kong movies at the cinema every day, and B movies from America and Italy and Europe and the big Hollywood blockbusters. But there are some movies where I was like, man, they didn't work on the big screen, but on DVD or on video, they're a lot more forgiving.
Mm.
Yeah.
Did you, Stu, as well as I did, get into Bruce Lee relatively late? I mean, did you see it in your teens or like early 20s or?
I did see it in my teens, and that was really the thing that got me into Hong Kong cinema. Because I knew of the movies, and I knew that like there were these really highly regarded films for like martial arts and fights, and it was gotten to the point where I had watched a lot of the big American action movies, and they were getting a bit boring, and I just found like just one random Bruce Lee movie on sale, like when you'd buy 3 VHSs for a certain price. So I pick up 2, and I couldn't figure out a third one, and just saw this Bruce Lee movie. So right, take that, and then of course it became like I didn't actively pursue Hong Kong films from then, but probably the next 3 years after that, I would slowly collect the movies wherever I'd go, and if I'd find one of them, I'd buy it.
Mm.
And I must have spent the entire last year trying to look for Game of Death 2. And when my partner had went down England to visit family, and said, right, when you're down there, any shops, go in, look at DVD, look for the movies, and if you find like that movie, get it from me. I'll give you the money when you get back.
And I'm willing to bet if she had found it, Game of Death 2, it probably would be an AKA for something completely different. You know, it might as well have been Enter the Game of Death in actuality, because the AKAs are so different.
But the stupidest thing was, we found it like years later, and it is in the same shop we go into all the time. It had probably been there the entire time. It just the fuckers had stick the price tag over the number 2. So it just says Game of Death.
I actually had that with Enter the Fat Dragon when I first came to Hong Kong. I used to pass a video shop, and they had Enter the Fat Dragon in the window. And so many times I went in there asking them to sell it to me, and they would always try and sell me porn. They would always offer me pornography, and I'd be like, no, I want Enter the Fat Dragon. No, here, have this. No, I want Enter the Fat Dragon. It's, certain movies slip through the gaps, but yeah. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, Tower of Death is actually pretty fun. I prefer it to Tower of Death or Game of Death 2, whatever you want to call it. I prefer it to Game of Death.
Oh, yeah.
It's far less annoying to me.
I mean, it's a guy in a lion suit versus cardboard taped to a mirror. It's an easy decision, really.
That was another one of those moments where I actually never...
Roy Horan, I mean, come on.
Yeah, Roy Horan.
Yeah, I'm in the graveyard. Where could you possibly go wrong with dialogue like that? It's,
Wang Jiangli, for fuck's sake. I mean, versus mostly Yuen Bu.
Of course. Yuen Bu when he was still paying the bills, just as a stuntman,
Yeah. I think the scene with the Westerners here was slightly changed in the English dub. The dialogue inside the restaurant, I think due to the language that was spoken of English dub, English being one, I think they changed them to be in French or something, so they had to...
Oh, no, I mean, it's like Way of the Dragon. I mean, the Chinese print of Way of the Dragon and the English print are so different dialogue-wise because there's, in the original print they're playing up exactly the language difficulties. So, I mean, that's where... I think sometimes people forget when they complain about, this film has been redubbed or it's been readjusted. Sometimes you've got to readjust it for an audience. I mean, the good thing is now giving people that option to watch the original version. I'm sorry, but there you go. Li Haisheng with an afro, painted black. I'm sorry.
And the great Peter Yang.
And what I love about it is Li Haisheng is a very, very regal gentleman when you meet him. He's quite serious and very, making movies. And then I showed him The Fat Dragon, and he just laughed like a little kid. And suddenly was willing to talk about the stupidity of it all, Because we were shooting an interview for, I think either Hong Kong Legends or Dragon Dynasty, and he was being very, making movies. It's a serious thing. Martial arts. I was like, yeah, but I love you in Enter the Fat Dragon. Look at this. And suddenly it all changed, and he was far more easygoing and fun.
You were like Sammo Hung with the Bruce Lee poster. But
exactly.
Look at this, smart, eh? It's and of course Leo sang bad guy, Magnificent Butch, 36 Chamber of Shaolin is in one of the training sequences. It's great and burly looking in Last Hurrah for Chivalry, the John Woo movie. I never remembered him being like pumped up and muscular as such, but in Last Hurrah for Chivalry, I remember him looking very big.
Oh no, he's always been he's one of those guys who a lot of the time he was just very ripped. Yeah, he's one of them guys that if he's got a jacket or a shirt on, he doesn't look big, but he's very sinewy. In a lot of movies, he's got to be 60-something now, and he still looks very fit and healthy. Mm-hmm. That was the scary thing last week, realizing that Sammo has got to be 62 now. 62.
Wow.
It's suddenly realizing, because he was fighting and leaping around, and suddenly realizing, hang on a minute, this guy's got to be 60 now.
And people still have the stomach to and people still have the stomach to complain about, Hong Kong cinema is not what it used to be. No one makes action movies anymore. Jackie Chan and Sammo has really gone on a downslide. Fuck you, they're older.
No, I think part of the problem is people seem to forget exactly that Enter the Fat Dragon is 30 odd years ago, it's not